Hey reader, welcome back to the channel. This is Centaur, and today we are continuing in our In Defensive series, taking a look at Chindit support units. So to be clear, this is not the Chindit infantry section. This is the subtype upgrade that you can give to mostly headquarters units and team weapons, as well as a few artillery pieces. We'll talk about that because there are a few that can take the upgrade in Bolt Action 3rd Edition. These came out with the Armies of Great Britain book, and it allows you to kind of theme your whole army, if you will, around Chindit. So it's not like you have to buy everybody the same upgrade, but if you wanted to, it kind of gives you the ability, in as much as they were used by the Chindits, to be able to kind of thematically make all of your force kind of feel the same way. Okay, it's very similar to upgrades that we saw in the Armies of Germany book, as well as the Armies of the United States book. And we have reason to believe, hopefully, every Armies of book, because it's pretty awesome. And so we're going to take a look at it. Currently, we find that there's a lot of people who will talk about the Guards upgrade. That's the one that gets all of the attention online, and for a good reason. I think out of all four of the options that the British get, that is in fact the best. However, I think the Chindit one, in specific situations and with specific kinds of units, could actually be quite useful. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, I guess the fundamental question and what qualifies you for this series is, do people actually use this, right? Because the In Defensive series is not just here's the stuff that's good. It's here's the stuff that's good that everybody is sleeping on, okay? And in general, when you're talking support teams, machine gun teams, artillery, mortars, things like that, generally speaking, people prefer these either inexperienced or regular. And part of the problem with the Chindit upgrade is you have to take them veteran, right? And if I'm taking a machine gun team, 65 points veteran for a machine gun team is a lot. Okay, that's a lot of points. Similarly, if I'm taking an artillery team like a light howitzer, it's already pretty expensive. If I'm taking a light AT gun, it's already pretty expensive. If I'm a Bofors heavy autocannon, it's already pretty expensive. And if I'm taking it veteran with an extra tax of 3 points per man, then it's even more expensive, right, than it was before. And so it's not unreasonable that when you see people's lists submitted for an event, they are not going Chindits, veteran Chindits, on supporting fire units. You might see veteran anti-tank teams as a general rule. So like, veteran Piat teams, for example, since they have to get so close, if you're going to use a Piat, taking it veteran is not a bad idea. And it's only 48 points veteran, right? If you don't take any of the upgrades on it. And so because of that, you might see an AT team taking veteran, but in general, you would rarely outflank or ambush with those units because, the Piat's range is so short. The best way to outflank a Piat is to put it with an officer in like a Jeep or some other 3-man capacity transport. And if that's the case, then having a benefit to outflanking on your unit doesn't actually come up, right? So you're not actually using the Chindit benefit. And since you're therefore not also starting on ambush, like you're getting the fieldcraft bonus, which is nice. But I mean, it's a lot of points to pay for fieldcraft, right? So because of that, I think it's fair to say we don't see these very often. We don't expect to see too many people, unless they're doing a thematic Chindit force, to be taking this upgrade. Okay. Similarly, Great Britain has access to another subtype that allows for regular veterancy, which is Guards. But more than that, since they can also take the Guards upgrade on veterans, if you want to only pay 1 point per man for a very useful ability, I mean, bumping up your veteran Piat team from 48 points to 50 points and making it so that they're less likely to have a pin on them when they're actually shooting is highly advantageous. And the other bonuses from the Chindit are a little more circumstantial, right, for that particular unit. And then finally, headquarters units kind of have difficulty taking advantage of this, mostly because, first of all, there are issues with ambush in that you may not want to start the unit on ambush if it's an officer, on account of you might want to be able to snap to other units on turn 1. And so starting with an ambush order already on you kind of prevents you effectively from being able to snap to. So that's not particularly great. There are limited benefits to outflanking an officer when they're not in a transport. So like there's just, HQ specifically kind of has issues, right? You probably don't want a forward observer to start on ambush. They're already infiltrating, so you're probably not outflanking. Like Fieldcraft is great. Don't get me wrong. Fieldcraft is really great on a forward observer. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I think there's limited utility for this specific upgrade on all the HQ options, and most people don't tend to take their team weapons veteran. So it's just in a weird spot, right, in terms of how it works, especially because of the fact that it's 3 points per man. So what is it? Okay, we'll just quickly talk over it because we've kind of been talking around it. First of all, it is a very expensive but useful utility subtype. Okay, and it covers a lot of different bases for you. So to start off with, it's located on page 23 of the Armies of Great Britain book. You have to take the unit veteran. It adds an extra 3 points per man, so that's roughly 6 to 12 points if we're talking a Bofors AA gun. But I mean that's a lot. And while it does give you 3 rules that you're paying for, you can only actually take advantage of 2 of them, right? Because you will either be in outflank, which is what behind enemy lines does. It removes the penalty for outflanking. Or you will start deployed on the table and you will start the game on ambush, right? So you can't actually take advantage of both of those in a given game. And then Fieldcraft you can take advantage of as long as you're not the Bofors heavy autocannon. It's the only Chindit option, as far as I recall, that cannot take that specific upgrade. I believe the medium AT gun might not be able to take the Chindit's upgrade, but don't quote me. Actually, I think it can. Medium AT gun would also count as one of the ones that doesn't qualify for the Fieldcraft upgrade. But in general, you've got really kind of 2 maximums you can take advantage of. But it actually gets a little bit worse because then if you don't outflank and you want your Chindit supporting unit to come in on first wave and you don't start deployed, you actually only get the benefit of Fieldcraft. So you're paying 3 points for 1 special rule, effectively. And in some cases, a mortar, for example, you probably wouldn't want to outflank, especially if it's a bigger mortar. Wait until turn 3 to come on, not be able to shoot because you moved and you're a fixed weapon in the case of a medium or heavy mortar. And so you're starting your ranging in process on turn 4, right? So you'd want to bring them on first wave, bring them on, run for turn 1, get onto the board, and then on turns 2 and onwards, you're firing, right? And so there are even some circumstances where you are dramatically overpaying for what you get. And that could just be the scenario mix with the deployment mix is what it is, right? The other issue too, and I think one of the reasons why we don't see as many people using it, though it is a unique opportunity, some people are going to think, well, these kinds of benefits like starting the game on ambush or outflanking, well, that's really what this minor nation over here does. And there's quite a few actually that have this type of special rule. And so they think to themselves, well, like that's not really what I'm playing. That's not really my mindset when I sit down and play British. So they don't. But one of the nice things about this upgrade is it kind of allows you to get the benefits of another army's, in some cases only special rule in the case of places like Norway and Greece, but surgical, right? Only the units that you really wanted on, right? Because there's a whole lot of units for both of those nations, and all of the others that get the special rule, like Poland, for example, that they don't want all of their units to start on ambush, right? They don't want all of their units to be outflanking, right? They want to have other options. And so they're not going to be taking advantage of everything. And in some cases, you don't want to outflank them and you don't want them in ambush because you want to push up quickly to do stuff. In which case, you're just passing on everything except for Fieldcraft on turn 1 from your special rule. Well, Chindit subtype units can get this benefit while still getting the benefits of the British Army special rules, which is really quite nice. And I think that's where the real utility of it comes down to. Because the truth is, the British do not get a lot of Fieldcraft outside of Chindit units. And Fieldcraft is an exceptionally good special rule. Behind enemy lines, you do also get with the commandos, and thus, because of that, also the SAS, if we want to break them out from the commandos. But, I mean, in general, outflanking, whatever. Some scenarios allow for it, some don't. So, maybe you get it, maybe you don't. It's not like it's unique to Chindit forces, but getting the specific mix and specifically the ability to start the game on ambush is something you cannot get in any other way. Okay, only Chindit forces get this kind of benefit. And because of that, there is some very interesting utility that you can get and some unique setups that you can get. And that's what we're going to be defending today. So why don't people take these? One, it's expensive. 3 points per man is a lot. That is more than anti-tank grenades. And as we mentioned in the anti-tank grenade video, there's a reason why you don't see people loading up on AT grenades on every single squad. Okay. And it's an expensive upgrade on units that you generally don't take veteran. AT rifles in general, You might take them inexperienced because 18 points for an order dice that can shoot from really far away and can pin armor is great, right? 25 points regular, which is what I tend to take them as, is also great. 33 points, 39 points with a 3 point per man upgrade. Ooh, I mean, that's almost as much as a regular Piat. Am I sure that that veteran AT rifle team is going to do a whole lot more for me? Not entirely sure. The second reason why I think people overlook it is that the game rules don't really encourage it, right? Like, ambush on mortars doesn't really work. Outflanking fixed teams, again, doesn't really work. Piats probably want to transport over and against, being able to utilize fieldcraft. They'd prefer to just hop out and shoot at people. They don't really want to be able to run through any old terrain as a general rule. And they'd prefer not to be outflanking on foot. They'd prefer to be in a transport, right, in order to do that stuff. So, like, again, it's a weird mix, though we're getting to the defense here. Okay, don't you worry. That weird mix does come out, and I think there is a benefit to it. And there's a reason why I chose this picture to go with this slide. Okay, but in addition to that, Britain has a lot of other good options for your points. Right? It's not like, for example, if Norway had a benefit like this. Norway isn't spending their points on anything else, right? I mean, you got veteran infantry, and that's like the most expensive thing you have. Yeah, the light howitzers and the medium mortar and this, I think they get a sniper team come after that. Like it's not that much that they have to spend their points on in the first place. So, they would be open to it. Britain is never short of points. Whether, it's the armored platoon that could easily eat up 1,000 points if you got all the fun stuff that you want to play with. Like, you're never going to be short points and looking for something to fill in. And so you're making a strategic investment that you probably wouldn't do otherwise, right? And since you have the guards upgrade already there, that is very useful and is only 1 point per man and can be taken on regular units. It's not like you're short, okay, well, I want a subtype so I can get better troops that are more than just your average blokes. You have that already. And so the Chindit option is not strictly necessary. So why would you take these guys? Well, first of all, from an offensive perspective, ambush and outflanking can both be a really good way of evading cover bonuses. So offensively, you can do a whole lot more damage to people if you wait for the transport to move up from its place of hiding so it can drop its payload. And then before it drops its payload, you take a shot at it with something and at least do pins to the transport and the units inside. Hopefully you actually blow it up or do something serious in terms of damage and cause problems for the guys that were inside the transport, right? Fieldcraft is also really great for assaulting into forests or ruins because now the fight is happening simultaneously instead of the defender fighting first, removing offensive casualties, and then the attacker continuing on with what remains, which is really nice. But in addition, there are also defensive bonuses to that, defensive sides of Fieldcraft that are quite nice, as we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, it is worth noting that if you take the Chindit upgrade on a fixed team, so that would be any of the artillery choices or any of the larger mortars or the machine gun team, keep in mind there is an overarching rule that a unit with a fixed property cannot assault. So the Fieldcraft benefit to assault is nice. It does not apply to any of those units, which is close to half of the units that can take the Chindit upgrade. Okay, to be fair. Just something to think about. Okay, but technically it does exist, and for some things, especially HQ units, this could be a very nice benefit if you were loading up your HQ with a bunch of submachine guns. In addition, outflanking does allow for side or rear shots on heavy weapons against armored vehicles, which is really nice. So if you did choose to outflank a unit and then bring them in and then start taking shots, you can do that. And that doesn't necessarily have to be an anti-tank infantry team, right? It could be a Piat team like that Piat team that you see over there in the picture. It could be, if you're feeling really gutsy with it and you don't think you're going to need that many turns firing it, it could be an anti-tank gun that you move in from the side. You set up in a nice bit of cover because you have fieldcraft, so you can roll it into a ruin, and then you start firing on things, right? And fieldcraft artillery is extremely rare, right? I mean, the Germans now get a couple if you're willing to take the Gebersjäger upgrade, and it's a very specific set of artillery. You actually get a wider variety of those with the Chindits, which is awesome. So, something we're thinking about. And then in addition, it also gives you access to offensive abilities that you cannot access otherwise. Again, we talked about how it's the only way to get ambush at the start of turn one, right? Where you're starting the game already waiting and peeking out ready for the enemy. And because some of your dice are out of the order die pool, when they reach into the bag to grab an order dice, there's a much better chance they got to activate one of their units. Maybe they got to come out and go toward where your ambush unit is. Okay, so offensively, it's unique. And I think unique is a good way of encouraging people to take a subtype because there is nothing else that's going to do it for them in the game. Defensively, these are actually really good. The upgrades you can take it on run roughly 2 to 4 men. Obviously, if you take it on an HQ unit, it depends. You can get closer to 5 or 6. Although again, HQs they don't benefit from it all that much. Okay, the most common units ready to take it are going to be 2, 3, or 4 man squads. They're veteran because you have to be veteran in order to take it, which helps you a lot with your resilience. Ideally, you'd have some form of cover because you should always be trying to go for cover if you can. And you can start on ambush, or which you can then change to the down order if you need to, right? So, if you're starting the game on ambush and somebody decides to shoot at your ambush unit and you're like, oh, I don't feel like maybe taking a loss on my machine gun team or my mortar team or something like that, you can always change it to down. And suddenly your cover gets improved against whatever it is that you were fighting against. And if they're using a indirect fire explosive damage and you're worried about that on turn one, then you can always go down and you're going to have the hits against you, which means, assuming that you're not a two-man team, you're going to be okay, right? You get the 6-inch move and shoot or a pivot for fixed related weapons, and you get the 12-inch move to redeploy for all of these units, with the benefit, of course, of fieldcraft, which is really nice. Okay, so defensively, you can get out of there in ways that are really, really advantageous to you. It also means, and this is one of the nice things about how you go about doing cover benefits, is that you're paying 6 to 12 points, which is all things considered not that much. It feels like a lot in the moment, but as a percentage of your total army, it's really not that much per unit that you're doing. And then of course you're actually paying for the upgrade to veteran, and that's where the real points add up. But you're getting access to better cover deeper into the board, right? Because since you have fieldcraft, you can run into a ruin so that anything that fires from you from any direction is now going to give you heavy cover, right? The problem of running behind it is that if somebody peeks around it, you're now not in cover at all. If you are next to it, so that way you're kind of peeking around it from one side, then people can still shoot at you and they might be able to maneuver in such a way that more than half of the unit is now outside of cover. And so because of that, they don't get cover anymore against the attack. The benefit of the Chindit upgrade is that you can just run it straight into a ruin, which would normally not allow for a run order because it's dense terrain. You have to advance into it. But now you can reach out and go way deep, 12 inches away, in with these guys, and you'll be safe. It also means, however, and this is the real benefit for Fieldcraft, I think, when it comes to running through dense terrain, is that if you've maneuvered forward and enemies are starting to wrap around you or it's getting a little bit tense, you can run through the dense terrain to the other side, and now nobody can see you from where they were. Now you force them to kind of maneuver with you and continue trying to hound you and come after you, and that allows you to prepare for that and set up counterattacks and counteroffensive, possibly other units on ambush when they try to make that maneuver in order to catch them. And all of that is also good. So defensively, the combination of Fieldcraft with the ability to start an ambush for offense, but switch it to down if you want to, means that starting on turn one, you should be able to keep these guys well and safe. From a utility perspective, hardly anybody, honestly, in the British book gets access to Fieldcraft. So the fact that you get access to Fieldcraft is already fantastic. And the fact that you can get it on a whole slew of things, right? Almost anything could take a Chindit upgrade. This does give for more reliable movement to objectives as well. And so while yes, you're going to be paying more points for upgrading to veteran and, you're paying the extra 3 points per man, you're also not paying for as many transports because you don't need as many. And it also gives you more escape options, like we were just talking about, right? The ability to bounce through dense terrain very quickly, and other enemies, even if they wanted to follow you in a direct path, they'd have to advance through that terrain. And if they want to wrap around, they're moving more distance, right? So there's less of a chance they're going to be able to advance and shoot at you. More likely it is they're going to have to run if they want to get that kind of distance in order to get to you. And that is advantageous because it keeps you alive for one more turn. If you're using it on small squads, then it's still pretty cheap, all things considered, right? Again, like a 39-point AT rifle team, if you're taking a 39-point veteran officer and you decide to pay an extra 3 points to make him 42 points, 42 points is not that much, right? And it's not great for a platoon commander, but it's really not that much, all things considered. And it gives you a officer who is, relatively durable against anything that's not a sniper, and it works out really well. Ambush does allow you to kind of shape enemy movement on the board, especially since I'm not saying you should do this because 73 points for a sniper team is an awful lot of points. However, a veteran sniper team that can start the game on ambush has the benefit of forward deployment, so that way you can place them in dense terrain, can easily maneuver out of that dense terrain because they have fieldcraft, is fantastic. So Uh, I really like that because it means that you'd have hit on threes, very probably. It- the ambush is a little less useful on account of the fact that you're already ignoring cover, but it also means that if they're running something up to you and you're afraid they might be within that 12-inch range, you can shoot normally and you're also hopefully being able to avoid cover because you shoot at them at any point along the move, right? So you can just time it well that way. You're still getting, really nice damage unless you have to shoot really, really close to you. And so, there's a lot of ways to utilize this, especially on those 2-man, 3-man sort of things where you're not paying that many points. And then finally, the fear of outflankers will kind of concentrate or slow the enemy advance. So if you have a large number of units that are being held in outflank, and they know, oh my gosh, all these guys could come in all at once and just try to wreck whatever it is that I have on that flank, it kind of forces people to move away from the edges of the board and toward the center, which is really good for Britain because we want people, especially since we probably got that artillery observer, to be as close together as possible. When we're using machine gun tanks like the M3 Stuart, we want them as close together as possible. When we're using big bada boom hardware like a Churchill, especially a Churchill AVRE, which has a heavy howitzer on it, we want people as close as possible. When we're using anything really, it shapes the battlefield in ways because, again, they don't know which side you're going to be coming in on. So they kind of have to plan for both, and that's going to funnel everybody into a much smaller area behind a smaller amount of terrain, which means a better chance that somebody's not going to be in cover when you need to shoot at them. And that, I think, will be very effective. So what's a sample list? To give you an idea of what this looks like, for starters, I should mention that there was a change that I made. Originally, I had this even as high as 18 or 19 order dice, while still having like, 2 Chindit units and like 4 or 5 teams that all had the Chindit upgrade. Okay. You'll also notice, by the way, I didn't cheat by just spamming light mortars with the Chindit upgrade, which is a perfectly fine way to do the Chindit upgrade. Um, I don't know. I don't tend to find it particularly effective to spam light mortars as veterans. So I didn't do that. But the point is, you could pump up your order dice even above the 16 that we currently have here at 1250, which is still a perfectly serviceable and perfectly reasonable amount of order dice, especially considering the fact that the overwhelming majority of units that are in this list are veterans. So in this case, we've got a platoon commander. He's got a pistol, inexperienced because I just need to save some points. It was fine. You can technically take these even with the Chindit upgrade, but I wouldn't do that. And then there's 2 Chindit units with LMGs, taken veteran. The plan is to put those 2 units on ambush on turn 1. So that way you've got the 4 shots from the rifles, you've got the 4 shots from the light machine gun, and you kind of pick your targets and go. And your veterans, probably starting in heavy cover, you're not likely to lose very many of these guys. You make sure that the heavy weapons platoon commander or whatever is giving them a nice bonus to make sure that they keep going, and you're good to go, right? We've got 2 5-man commando squads with SMGs. Those are going to be with the platoon commander in a Priest Kangaroo. Priest Kangaroo is a DV8 transport, which is really nice and fully armored. We could save ourselves some points and even add a heavy machine gun on there if we ended up going with something like an M3 half track, or if we wanted to kind of combine the commandos into a squad and maybe cut a couple of men out and put them in like an M3 white scout car or something like that. I decided I wanted 2 squads because I wanted more order dice. I wanted them at least 5-man because it's 10 shots coming out from the squad, which is really nice. They should still fight pretty well. And while the platoon commander cannot command both of the commando units and the kangaroo in a given turn, you just move up the kangaroo. And then on the next order dice you draw, you snap 2 with the platoon commander and jump everybody out because a DV8 priest kangaroo is actually going to be quite difficult to remove. It's going to live for quite a long time. So in general, I'm a fan. I think that these this rifle platoon, it's durable, it punches really really hard, it provides a lot of things that we're really going to want. The next 2 are going to provide supporting fire for all of that. And so we've got our heavy weapons platoon with a platoon commander inexperienced with a pistol. He's going to be leading 2 veteran Chindit machine gun teams. These guys are also going to start on the board if at all possible, and they're going to start on ambush as well. So now we've got 2 light machine guns with rifle support on ambush. We've got 2 medium machine guns with 6 shots each, all on ambush and ready to support. And then we're going to outflank all 3 of the AT rifles. Because 1, they're not going to be all that necessary for us on the first 2 turns, but come turn 3, hopefully the enemy's starting to commit against our armor, they're starting to commit elsewhere, and so they've got their armor and their support teams ready to rock and roll, and we're going to take them all by surprise, and we'll wipe them out with 3 AT rifles coming and shooting, which means on average you're going to get at least one of them to hit. Possibly better than that if you can outflank and bring them in on an advance 6 inches that then results in them being at point blank range of something because somebody drifted a little too far to the edge. And then our armor platoon to back this up, we're going to take a Matilda 2, that's the one with the light AT gun and the coaxial machine gun. Taking regular as a command vehicle at 165 points. We're going to add two M3 Stuart 1s, which have the double forward-facing machine gun, so 6 shots to the front, in addition to the coaxial MMG on the light AT gun turret. It's relatively durable, a DV8, provides a good amount of anti-personnel fire, which is excellent. Really good for mopping up and kind of providing pins early on, trading shots. It also gives us 3 light AT guns, which are reasonable for trying to at least do pins. Probably not all that great for removal, but don't worry, the AT guns are going to help us out with those as we go along. And speaking of that, the AT rifles, we get a 4th AT rifle from an early war motorcycle, taken regular with the AT rifle. I'm not as big a fan anymore of the LMGs on the early war motorcycles. They are fantastically cheap order dice at 35 points regular, which is great. But I really love the idea of us having something that can kind of whip around. You get doubled movement on road, so a 24-inch advance to try to side shot something really early on. And if you can do it at point blank range, then you're looking at pen +4 on an AT rifle for 45 points regular. That's fantastic. Hitting on 3s, I mean, that's as good as a light anti-tank gun for cheaper than a light anti-tank gun, and with better maneuverability. Like, it's fantastically good. And that's what you've got. You've got a lot of order dice, for having a veteran loadout, right? Like, you could cut the cost for the machine gun teams by more than half. You could cut out a couple Chindits. You could cut out a commando squad, maybe bump the commando squad up a bit more. And you could load out with so many light mortars if you wanted to, right? You could even make some of them Chindits if you wanted to. So, like, there are ways to be able to make the order dice work. But what this does is it gives you that mechanized punch with a lot of flanking units that are going to put pressure on the enemy while still having a very sufficient supporting fire base, which is great. It's also very durable. They're going to be very hard to remove. You're actually not going to lose that many order dice, all things considered, when playing this one. You're going to be able to play with a lot of the models that you're bringing to the table. You're going to pass a lot of the order tests that you need to make because you're starting on 10s with basically everything, unless they're in a transport, they're giving out a morale bubble, and or they're an armored vehicle. Right. And so, like, there's a lot of ways, I think, to maximize the firepower, the removal, while not taking much in return yourself. And when it comes to holding objectives, even your backline objectives, they're being held by multiple veteran squads, which is fantastic. So I think there's a lot here that you can do. And I don't see people running Chindits. Admittedly, like, wishes were horses. Would I prefer to run 53-point regular machine gun teams as guards units over 74-point veteran Chindits? Probably, to be honest. Would I prefer 27-point regular AT rifle teams as guards over and against 39-point veteran Chindit ones? Probably. And then, save up all those points just by saving points on the heavy weapons platoon. You probably add another armored vehicle. Probably even bump up your early war motorcycle to something like a Humber armored car, right? Which is just an AT rifle, but better, right? Because it's not O-cannon. So, like, there are ways you can do it. I'm not saying this is the meta. What I'm saying is it's a skew build that I don't think a lot of your opponents are going to be prepared for. And the fact that you have 7 units with fieldcraft supported by 4 armored vehicles and a transport means, like, you have mobility that a lot of armies don't have. And you have the ability to redeploy very effectively in case you're losing in a given spot and you just need to reconsolidate so you don't lose as much. And I think those are benefits that are not so easily thought through and not as easily quantified in list building. And I think this list does it really well. So all I'm saying is you should consider it, okay? And so what should you be thinking about if you were to run something like this? First of all, as much as possible, you want to start them deployed or outflanked. Again, get 2 of your rules instead of 1, okay? Take advantage of ambush if you possibly can. A lot of your units are going to perform best on ambush. Or, I mean, you can outflank if you want better angles for cover. I think things like a pen +2, for example, tend to do better in outflank. Pen +5 from something like a Piat team, I'd be tempted to just take it veteran, maybe without the Chindit upgrade. Maybe take it with the guards upgrade and take it veteran, take it like 50 points, and put that in a transport. I tend to find that tends to be a better way of using Piats because of that short 12-inch range. But, something like an AT rifle team especially is a really good choice for this. Because of the fact that, again, you'll want them to be able to maneuver to a point where they're getting side or rear shots instead of taking things on from the front. Headquarters units could be a decent choice if you're planning on taking it as a bigger squad. Bulk them out and take submachine guns, and your plan with that squad is, 1, to help out the rest of the outflankers when they're coming through, because then for future turns, if they end up getting shot at, there's a higher chance that they'll have a morale bubble to help them out. And again, the morale bubble from the British is really, really good. But the second reason why I would take something like that is because you're like, well, what this actually is this is an artillery and team weapon clearing team. That's what we're here for. We're here to push them on an objective that they didn't think they were going to have to worry about and clear people off through sheer volume of fire from like 5 submachine guns on veterans with Chindit upgrade. Things like that are advantageous and they will help to move the needle, especially if your opponent has not played against large numbers of outflanking units with the Chindit upgrade where they're moving very easily and very quickly through rough terrain. It can be a bear to deal with because things they thought were safe or things that they thought they'd have time to redeploy and bring guys back to help out, they find they just don't have that kind of time because of how swiftly you're moving through the backfield. Try to deploy a lot of these units relatively early, especially if they're on the ambush side of things, because you want to make sure that you know where your firing lanes are. The last thing that you want is to have a unit on ambush. You've got a good plan, but there's one of your units within an inch of where they're firing. And so you don't get to take the shot, right? These are the things you have to think about. In general, you want to activate them late to maximize their damage potential, right? If you're outflanking, you don't want to bring them on really early and then people turn around and start shooting you up on the same turn that you came on. Related to that, you also want to make sure that, if you have a unit that's on ambush, that you're activating them as late as you can, right? But in addition to that, like, even if you don't have them starting with either of those, you want to be able to take advantage of the field craft and be able to run through stuff without necessarily triggering a whole bunch of people to then shoot at you, right? You want to be able to utilize that fieldcraft ability in a way that's going to help you to maneuver to a place without then being engaged, getting into trouble, and losing men that you don't want to lose. The fact that you have high morale with a damage value 5+ because of the fact that you're veteran and then cover on top of that does mean that these guys are going to be very survivable and reliable. They're going to do what you want them to do most of the time. This is not to say if you have to, don't deploy these guys in cover. You should still be deploying them in cover, okay, as much as you can, best you can. It might mean that deploying them in cover means deploying them behind an armored vehicle, right? You deploy the armored vehicle, you deploy the Chindit subtype unit behind them. That might be more advantageous for you, right? Just to make sure that they're going to keep doing their job and you're going to have the models in hand that you need. And then they can provide cover fire for that tank as it moves up. Use these guys to push safe objectives. Again, things that the opponent is not ready for. Side or rear shots on vehicles are going to be fantastically good and very useful. And then try to evade that forward cover from infantry squads. So if squads are hiding behind a building, if they're hiding behind a stone wall, right, or something like that, maneuver around them, especially with those outflanking units, and then take them from a direction where there is no cover prepared for them. Okay, that's what you want to have. So overall, what are they offering you? Okay, they are a very durable utility option for somewhere, it could be as much as 15 to 20 points, especially when you start factoring in, for some of the smaller teams, they're only paying 6 points for this upgrade, but then you add on the cost for upgrading them to veteran beyond what you would have paid for to take them at regular. So, it's about 15 to 20 points per man in terms of what you'd be paying. Well, 15 to 20 points per squad. Yes, it is an investment. You are getting a lot of utility out of that investment, so I think it's fine. Depending on the list that you're up against, you might even choose to not put guys in outflank and just start as many guys as you can on the board in ambush. That way, if you know that the opponent has like a ton of submachine guns all loaded up into transports, and so you know that in order for them to use like 80% of their army, they have to push. This could be a highly effective way to do it, is just having 7 units starting on ambush, and the rest of them are British armor and a British armored carrier that can carry men in it, large numbers of men in it to counterattack them, right? All of that is highly effective, and there's no other way to get it in the British Army other than to take the Chindit upgrade. You are less likely to cough up victory points in Sink and Destroy because so many of your units that would have been 2 men, 3 men, easy to remove order dice are not so easy anymore because they are now damage value 5+ effectively. And so good chance that a lot of the shots that end up rolling to wound against them are not actually going to do wounds. And so you'll keep them around an awful lot longer. And then in the future, you can always just go down, right? But finally, and this is worth noting, cool hats. Right. In the Commonwealth box, we actually get some nice longer floppy hats that you could use for making a bunch of these guys. And, Warlord, as you've seen throughout the video, has a number of kits for support teams of various kinds that can also do this. And so, for those of you who are looking for a little bit of fun, something interesting, something different, just trying something different in terms of color scheme and other stuff from a modeling perspective, there are some very interesting kit bash and painting options for you. right? I mean, you might have seen it from the opening video, kind of the opening picture when we first started the video. You've got guys with open shirts and stuff like that. Like, there's just some interesting kit bash options and some interesting green stuff options that you can do in order to make these guys look the way that they were historically. And I'm always in favor of having something new and something different to add to your army. But what do you think? Do you think that just the points cost is just too high? Do you think that the fact that you're not actually getting 3 special rules, even though you're paying for 3 special rules, that's just too much, that it should really be a 2-point upgrade instead of a 3-point upgrade, since there's really no way to actually maximize the 3 that you're getting off of it? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.